What happened is I was always an ambulance attendant through college. Bob was an ambulance attendant back in the day, and then when an opportunity came up, we began collecting ambulances because we were collecting cars. Always interested in ambulances and had a lot of fun with ambulances. So I think that was there was no genesis, no one particular point. Bob can give you the history of where these cars came from because he was the one that got the first ambulance for originally a wedding gift, I guess.
We became friends with the owner of Mall City Ambulance over the years. Mike was a close friend and worked for Mall City a lot. I worked a little bit. But in my contact with Mall City, I always commented on the two Miller Meteor ambulances, 1976 Cadillacs, because they're so outrageous. The lights, the sirens, the color, they're just way over the top. So I would remark to the owner, Ron Onderlinde, who became my patient, and his good friend, Craig McDonald, who owned the local record service, I would comment, those ambulances are absolutely fabulous. I love them, I love them, and Mike used to work on them. I never took a call on them, but Mike did. While the two ambulances were in storage and deteriorating, the 76 Lifeliner was still functional, but it was a little ragged around the edges. And the 76 Criterion had been stripped down in preparation to be restored, but it was stripped down to bare metal and then put in a storage building, and it was very improperly stored. So one day I was tinkering here in the shop and I hear this siren wailing in the outside. Just super loud. I went out there and there was the ambulance, and Craig McDonald was delivering it as a wedding present from Ron Onderlinde. And then I realized, I heard from Steve Onderlinde that the Criterion was going to go to the crusher. First of all, money for steel scrap was way up at the time, and Steve needed the space. So Mike and I went over there to look at the Criterion, and then what happened then, Mike?
Well, Criterion was in rough shape. It was filled with what looked like junk, but which was actually parts from the outside of the Criterion and parts from other places, other things. Oh, you would look at it and wouldn't be able to see the future. But we thought we'd take a chance on it. Talked to Steve. Steve talked to his dad. Dad said, fine, take it. We had it towed over to Dennis's, American Auto Body. Real nice guy who was an absolute craftsman. One of the last craftsmen, I think, in auto body work. Stripped it down to bare metal again, and then built it up. It had a complete rehab on the inside, outside, many small touches, lights and electronics and added features. Bob searched through the internet and through contacts that he had, and so both of the ambulances came to life again. Pure luck. The last two 1976 matched M&Ms that we think exist, I understand that of the Criterion series, there were a handful made, and there might be 50 left on the road today. We've seen maybe 4 or 5 at professional car shows that we go to where ambulances are displayed. So that's quite a rare unit, but it's even rarer to have a Lifeliner sitting right next to it in a perfectly matched state. Bob and I did answer one ambulance call together once. And this was community ambulance, and it was purely by accident. We were looking at an ambulance that was getting ready to go on the road at a place in Standale, west of Standale in Grand Rapids. And the lady who was married to the owner came running out and said, we have an ambulance call. And as I recall, it was on North Alpine Avenue, which was probably 18 miles away. And it was an accident, a PI accident, personal injury accident. Bob and I jumped in the car. We were backing up Rockford Rescue, which is a volunteer organization. And they had called a volunteer company, Community, because they didn't like the professional ambulance services out of Grand Rapids. So totally overall, it was a complete mistake on their part, and it was the wrong thing to do, but nonetheless, we wanted to run an ambulance call, so we did. We ran up there, lights and siren, and then when we got up there, we loaded the person on the ambulance cot, as I recall, had a femur fracture or something like that. We turned around and the ambulance batteries had gone dead because ambulance batteries do that. So we had to have a jump at the scene. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. By a wrecker.
And when we conked out across the street, we were perpendicular to the flow of traffic because we had been trying to turn around. So we're sitting there with a patient in the back, perpendicular to the road, just super embarrassing because the lights and siren were drawing more juice than what the generator could put back into the battery. Sure. So when it conked out, it wouldn't start back up. So we did get jump started and learned our lesson.
We both started young because in the 60s, when we were in high school, kids were working all the time. I think maybe unlike today. And I was working at Marlin's grocery store, right next to Sweetland restaurant. And ambulance crews would stop there. It'd be like a routine stop. I asked one of the guys once, how do you ever get a job here? And he said, come on down. He said, we've got a first aid class going. I went to one class, and then the next time I was going to class, Bob asked about it. I said, come on along. Bob came along at the end of that class after 2 sessions. Of course, Bob only had 1 session. We both got our first aid cards.
Once you collect a few ambulances, word gets out. And one person tells another who tells another, and before you know it, if somebody has an ambulance for sale or a professional car, word gets back to you. And well, word got back to me on the 1965 Fruitport Fire and Rescue Ambulance, which was in storage in Battle Creek. The guy who owned it, his wife wouldn't let him get another collector car until he sold one of the ones that he had. So word got back to me. I shot out to Battle Creek to check it out and drove home with a 1965 Superior Fruitport Fire and Rescue. A few years after that, I'm online on eBay just looking around for police cars, emergency vehicles, and here is a 1966 Ford Galaxy 500 retired fire chief's car in Indiana, Fruitport Fire and Rescue. So I bid on that and wound up getting it. Sent a couple college kids down to pick it up a few days later. And now we have the Fruitport ambulance and the Fruitport fire chief's car sitting side by side. They're reunited after 50 or 60 years apart.
And no, we're not interested in a fire truck that matches. Fire trucks are collected by a whole different breed of collectors.
Psychotics. I mean,
yeah,
collectors.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of these cars, you never know where to draw the line. You could go crazy when you go to restore an old vehicle. You can take it completely apart, every nut and bolt, right down to the frame, then have the frame blasted and powder coated, and then start putting it back together, brand new piece by brand new piece. Restoring these ambulances and maintaining them, there has to be, of course there's a money factor, and there's a good luck factor to find pieces and parts, but the real factor is you have to have a desire and enjoyment and a certain amount of satisfaction in taking on the challenge, meeting the challenge, and seeing the final product. And that's a critical ingredient, more than money, more than luck, more than just knowing somebody. You have to enjoy it. And Mike and I thoroughly enjoy the history of the ambulances and the pride behind them and the provenance. Now, the 1965 Superior Royale Rescuer, we left with its original patina. The 66 Fire Chief's car, we left with its original patina. And the 53 Pontiac, somebody had already restored that, and it looks like a complete nut and bolt restoration. So it varies wildly from car to car. And as you may know, there's a trend towards having vehicles, collectible vehicles and vintage vehicles be in their original used state with that so-called patina of age and use or abuse over the years.
Many of the parts and many of the different things to bring it back to its original state have to be found through a variety of other collectors. And so you have to develop a network of people. Bob developed that network.
People have hobbies, and my occupation is, of course, being a physician and cardiologist. And my hobby is working on maintaining, detailing out minor repairs to collector cars, which gives me the ability to concentrate on a completely different area. So my mind is focused on a car problem, and it gets me away from the stress and strain and challenges of medicine. I don't know if it was some kind of a foreclosure, but I bought it through the bank at an auction. Actually, Ron Onderlinde, the owner of Mall City, that gifted these two ambulances to Mike and I. Ron was very familiar with this type of bank auction or whatever it was. He accompanied me there. I had a number that I was going to go up to and nothing higher. The auction carried on, and I wound up getting the building for a very good price. And it's been here ever since. We store cars in it, we work in it, and we're sitting in it right now with our collectible ambulances.
5 to 7 years, Bob and I are planning our estates. It may be that these things will be dragged out on the street and sold to some kid that, wants to use them for their garage rock band. We're not sure. We don't see that we've got people in line to give it the same tender care and knowing care that we gave them. And the professional ambulance group, if you look at them, they're all guys of our age. And so we would love to donate some of these things to a museum if we could find one that has interest in it. So we ask ourselves a question, we've all the time, back and forth, Bob and I, what will happen in 5 to 7 years? John Maynard Keynes, an economist, says in the long term will all be dead, won't care. But these ambulances, deserve to be preserved because they are a slice of Americana and very, very important steps in emergency medical pre-hospital care. Big transitional symbols, I guess. Where they're going to be, I don't know. Where they're going to be, Bob?
Well, current day ambulance people will walk in or see them at a event, and they don't remember ambulances like that were originally built on the frame of a Cadillac Fleetwood, four-door Fleetwood family car, converted to an ambulance. And they had no idea anything like this ever even existed, other than they see it in the movies occasionally. And these ambulances are rare, and they have a lot of provenance. They have a history behind them. And some people will pay millions of dollars for a painting to hang on the wall, and these are every bit as beautiful to me and have as much artwork and meaning and history as any painting you would ever see. These they're basically priceless to me. But not to everybody, and we don't know exactly what to do with them, but when I'm dead and gone, they might wind up going to the crusher. They could wind up the centerpiece of a emergency medical museum somewhere, which is what I hope, because a lot of people get tremendous pleasure out of seeing them.